Hello, everyone, and welcome to Align, Engage, Fulfilled, the podcast for leaders, entrepreneurs, and changemakers who believe that people and purpose drive profits, not the other way around. I'm your host, Clarence Moore, and if you haven't yet, make sure to like, subscribe, follow our podcast to help us spread the message. Now, there's no question that the old playbook is broken. We're all told to follow the rules and chase engagement, but we're left feeling burnt out and misaligned. It's time to challenge the status quo of workplace culture, career development, and business growth. On this show, we go beyond the buzzwords to decode the brain behind the brilliance of fearless founders, contrarian thinkers, and leadership experts who are shaping the new world of work. This podcast is your guide to building a more fulfilling and human centric career or business, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Now, as we near the end of our first season, we've talked extensively about the individual, whether it's finding your alignment, your purpose, and your voice. But an individual doesn't exist in a vacuum. They exist within systems, communities, and organizations. Knowing how to navigate the world of work is critical, and you need more than just an updated playbook. You need to know your North Star, your non-negotiable values, and a deep awareness of the entire ecosystem in which you'll blaze your trail. Today's guest is Julius Alejandro, an ecosystem strategist. While many consultants focus on a single piece of the puzzle, Julius designs the entire board. With over a decade of experience, he builds cross-sector initiatives that expand access to entrepreneurship and workforce pathways. He is the architect who turns abstract vision into the concrete strategic infrastructure that delivers results. Now, throughout this first season of the show, we've explored two of the three core foundations of what I believe make up a successful and sustainable business: leadership and marketing. Today, Julius joins us to discuss the third pillar of my framework: strategy. But not strategy as a dry 5-year plan. We're talking about strategy as a living ecosystem, the critical bridge that connects personal purpose to organizational culture. Without this bridge, vision is just a dream and culture is just a vibe. Julius is here today to talk to us about how to build the systems that make both of them real. Julius, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome, and thank you for inviting me, Clarence. I appreciate this.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to have a conversation with you. But before we start, can you give us a little backstory into your journey and how you got here today? How did you become Julius Alejandro, the educator, entrepreneur, and strategist?
Oh yeah. So my origin story began in college when I began actually in student leadership with student government. I came from Southwestern College and I was part of student government there. It's one of those things where I saw complex system, right? The bureaucracy, but somehow it just clicks. I understand how the systems, the layers, departments, and processes, and I didn't know I was good at it. I became the executive vice president in the fall, and then the president in the spring, and that gave me kind of like in a college setting a micro macro view of systems, how they
Hmm.
interplay with different stakeholders.
Yep.
And then I got involved in community organizing with the Filipino American community, specifically youth development. I ran the Filipino American uh, youth organization, PIO, and that was multiple school. That was in the South Bay. And during my time, I had about 90 students from 4 different high schools. Again, access to higher education, community service. It was an after-school program. So all these things in regards to systems and stakeholdership were there in my beginning. And when I went to San Diego State, I continued that. And that was critical at SDSU. I created my first leadership program. It's actually the basis called AppScope. It was a freshman leadership program, and it is the basis of even now because no one taught me about how to create a program or do leadership development. It was self-taught. I remember it was from I got the budget, like literally I printed out, it was like an inch thick from UCLA. And I spent summer just like analyzing it and just kind of like what makes work. And it was the first time the Filipino student org at SCSU, AB Samahan, they never had programs. It was just a one entity.
Mm,
And when I proposed it, it was innovative and they took a risk. And I ran for 8 years. I trained 71 freshmen, and I had 70% success rate of those coming to the program take leadership position and on campus.
wow. That's amazing, and I know a lot of people who are here in San Diego and are familiar with AB Savahan. I mean, growing up, I heard, everybody was talking about AB Samahan, so it's incredible that you were an integral part of the development of that program. Now, you are an ecosystem strategist. In business, as you and I know, we often stay in our silos, whether it's marketing, HR, or sales. But an ecosystem implies really deep interconnectedness. What does it mean to view a business or a career not as a machine with parts, but as a living ecosystem? And what's the danger of trying to fix one part without understanding the whole?
That's a great question. So yes, how can I put it? So let me put a framework in the startup ecosystem. There's the funding, there's training, there's research, there's service providers. So there's this framework, right? Like you need all these elements for to help an entrepreneur build their business. So that was a great framework. Like, oh, so you need certain elements, you need infrastructure. But then, as you said, Clarence, there's this danger, right, of silos and everything, because I believe we look at things in a mechanical parts. Okay,
Yeah,
think about a car, right? So if the headlight's broken, will the car still run? Yes. If the if the brakes give out, you could still start the engine. So there's this essence of that's not my problem. I'm doing my
yeah,
part. I'm making what I need to make run, and what you're doing is not affecting me. But I think we need to shift our mentality, our focus. It's not mechanical. It's actually organic. Think of it like the
mm,
lungs, okay?
yes,
So if you can like something wrong with your lungs, you're having breathing, right? It's affecting your entire body, even though you can't see it. And externally, what does that do? So what it does do is like someone's gonna be accusing like, hey, why are you slow? Like you're just lazy. Or like
mm,
but without understanding, the root cause affecting the entire system, like without proper intake of oxygen, it's hard, right? Your muscles, you're not that fast. You're struggling. Your cognitive function may be a little well kind of not sharp, and people may
right,
accuse
not
you of
effective.
why are you kind of ignorant or like not articulate. Again, there's that danger, right? We just assume what we see without understanding the layers, how one part affects others. So it's like in a classroom, if the building lights come up, you might say, "Oh, it's someone here," when it's actually another part of the building. Something happens. Well, there's no awareness into that. We don't see. We like to just see what's in front of us without seeing, oh, the entire building and all the different parts that make it up.
Yeah. No, I think that that is important. I love that you make the analogy of it being an organic system versus a mechanic system, and I think that that's a huge mindset shift that we need to make in the world of business in terms of how we're going to approach this next version of the world of work, because there are significant differences in looking at it as a mechanic system. It becomes very black and white, it becomes very binary, it becomes very logistical versus an organic system where you understand, you recognize that there are nuances, that there are things that are connected that might seem disparate, but are actually connected and influence each other strongly. So I love that you look at it as an organic system. How does that play into your career now. You're an educator, so you're an adjunct professor. You are very much involved in the entrepreneur community in San Diego. I mean, you are in different aspects of kind of this entrepreneurial ecosystem. How does that perspective play into how you approach that role, that responsibility that you have now?
Yeah. So it's interesting. And so there is a disconnect. Example, when I used to be a mentor for SHU's entrepreneur program. So I was amazed by the students' lack of knowledge of entrepreneur events that were happening in the community that's accessible, that are free or low cost. I was just blown away. Like, how do you not know? You're in an entrepreneur program, I mean, it is what it is, right? So it's one of those things. And I remember the director told me, like, Jules, like, you see the entire board, you see all the connections. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I mean, sh- why is not that common? I
Right.
mean, given like their responsibility, I'm not knocking that, but it's just amazing, like how we think we take things for granted. Like, oh, you should
Yeah.
know. Not really. So so to me, it's like connection. Again, it's a framework, right? The framework is like for an ecosystem to thrive, you need these certain elements. And to me, I just see those elements and connect the. I think the underlying is always as you mentioned, yes, there is the technical, right? But underlying kind of like the nerve center to connect all those are relationships.
Yes.
Either pre-existing relationship or we need to create that relationship where it's an easy phone call, an easy email for some type of activity to happen.
Yeah. Well, I want to pull on the word strategist for a little bit because it is an expertise that you and I both share. And frankly, it's a word that I think is deeply misunderstood. And we talked about this a little bit in our introductory call when we were first talking about the episode. But throughout my career, and I'm sure, yours as well, I've crossed paths with countless leaders who mistake strategy for a plan. They think that a to do list, a calendar, or a set of short form tactics is a strategy. But to me, and very evidently to you, those are just the mechanics. True strategy isn't about the what or the when, it's about the logic of the how. It's about the long term vision, the directional mapping, and really the cohesive argument for how we're going to win and achieve the mission. A plan changes when the weather changes, but a strategy really acts as the compass that tells you where to go regardless of the weather. So, in your work building complex ecosystems, you have to think years, not quarters, into the
Yes.
future.
Yeah.
What's the most common disconnect that you see when leaders try to build a strategy? Do you find that they're actually just building a plan? And how do you help them lift their gaze from those immediate tactics to the long term architecture?
Yes, exactly. You hit the nail on top of the head. Because again, with Village Up, my role as a co-founder and executive director for Village Up, um, the strategy is, I mean, besides the mission, right? An accessible ecosystem. It's my strategy is always through partnership. We will create access for entrepreneurs into the community.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Simple. You could see
Simple.
that through all our partnerships, right? I mean, there's never a Village Up event where it's just me and my team. No, it's always people are surprised. Like I'm not up there. Like no, I only do the intro and outro. That's it. It's always a
Yeah.
partnership.
Yeah.
I think the greatest example, Clarence, is strategic planning. Right, like when
Yeah.
when you spend hours going to the
Days, months. Yeah.
details, and you're like, wait, we need to go back to like, what are we doing?
Right.
Like,
Yes.
why, right? Like the bottom line, why? Like, why are we doing these events? So I know for we just had Village Up board meeting and our 5-year anniversary. We're gonna say we're gonna go back to founder focus. So all our events, we're shifting our gears towards that, more focused on founders instead of just like one-off events. And yeah, I think it's a struggle. Like people think, oh, strategic planning, we're gonna spend like 3 hours or 4 hours. Q1, Q2, Q3, months, weeks, and KPIs.
Right.
Yes, but like, what's the drive? What's the feel, right? What's the why? Why,
Yeah.
why, why are
Yeah.
you going to a destination?
Right. It becomes very again, it becomes very surface level, and then these leaders, the same leaders who treat it more as this short-term tactical plan, and end up asking why their strategy wasn't effective. They end up asking why the strategy didn't work, why it failed. And they fail to recognize that they were doing it wrong from the very beginning. So if strategy is that long-term architecture, let's talk about how we actually build it. You use a phrase that I love in one of your posts. You or I think it's on your website actually. You say turning community vision into strategic infrastructure. Many leaders have that vision, they have that dream, and honestly, they might even have a plan. They have a to-do list, but they miss the middle piece, which I think is the most critical piece when it comes to strategy, and it's that infrastructure. What's the most common gap that you see between a leader's good intentions and the actual systems that they build to execute them?
Yeah, great question. Oh my God. Okay, the biggest thing I realized, so I had another nonprofit that I shut down called Emerging Leaders. So that was great because it was driven by my passion. It
Hmm,
was
yeah.
worse as a manager, compliance. Oh, I like nothing. No money was coming in, our own personal money. I think we only got like $400 for,
Hmm,
for just for your banquet. But the relationships, right? So all the soft skills, all that relationship was there, but the infrastructure was non-existing. So that was the biggest lesson I learned from my first attempt, right? In this case, with Village Up, I was like, including my consulting, right? Um, Everyone knows a big part component was the strategy was like, I care about youth and giving them opportunity. So we're gonna help founders, but I want to give young adults career paths, right? So I'm like, that's my value. So to me, I'm like, I'm gonna do an internship program, and I built official agreements with SCSU and and Southwestern College saying, hey, like, if you give us interns, they take a class, we're vetted, they could intern with us and get college credit. So there's this pipeline,
hmm,
right? Even in relationship with
yeah,
student orgs, certain student orgs there, or some even a sorority unofficially, but there's this pipeline, right? So I just tell them like, hey, can you shoot it out to those college entities, and we've been turnkey. We have systems in place. We have an infrastructure, an onboarding infrastructure, and a pipeline. So it was to a point where it was called a nonprofit has hired me to build their internship program. So a couple months ago they hired me, and I'm running. I created their official in-house internship program, and to me it's natural. So again,
yeah,
that's right. So in regards to recruitment, so to help me on operational level, right? Partnership wise, so we have partners that can provide space or speakers and a location. So partners for locations, and also understand like we have a network of founders. Say, hey, we want you to be a speaker. We have this event. Either we partner or we're doing this event together, and we would like you to be a speaker to amplify your voice. So all these kind of logistical things are set very intentionally, right? Strategic infrastructure, and for us just to commit, right? Like, we are gonna have this event, and we're just gonna basically turn out key for the entire process. So that was
yeah,
everything's very intentional. So we're not starting from scratch. No one's gonna try to like, Google like a place or whatnot. Who do we speak to? We're I have it all documented. We have a list, our resource list, our speaker list, our partners. My team just needs to tell me what they're looking for, and I just make the intro based upon our relationships.
yeah. Well, I think that that's the evidence of the importance of seeing the entire ecosystem and seeing it as this organic thing. Because in order to build a strong, effective infrastructure, you have to be able to visualize all the related parts, right? And to set that foundation so that you're able to effectively navigate every move that you make, every decision that you make. So I think that that is a very critical component that a lot of leaders miss, even if they are, looking at what they have as a to-do list. Oftentimes there are a lot of things that are missed because they have a very tunnel vision from where they are to where they're trying to get, and they neglect all these outliers, all these things that seem like they're not related but need to be. Now, I want to connect this episode a little bit to our last episode with Marcus Combs. In that episode, we talked about the importance of finding your internal compass, your why, and your North Star. But knowing where you want to go is different from knowing how to get there. I see strategy as that translation layer. It's the discipline of taking that ethereal internal alignment and giving it a roadmap. When you work with your emerging leaders or entrepreneurs who have that fire and that vision, but they don't have a plan, what's the first strategic block that you help them lay? How do you move them from dreaming to designing?
Yeah. So I deal with early stage founders, especially with the idea stage. I think it's not a linear process because again, you're dealing with someone, right, with their dreams. It's just talking to them and understand this one meeting is not going to solve and give you the pathway. It's going to be a constant refinement, right? And it's just talk to them and just making sure, like, at least, like, for me, the guardrails are there, like, what's your structure? What's your strategy? Like, if you're going to put risk, how do we mitigate the risk so it can be effective instead of just like wasting money, time, and resources? Because it's one of those things where they know what they want.
Yeah.
I'm not telling them what they want. They know what they want. It's me helping them. How do we sustain it? How,
Yes.
you know, at least giving them the tools like, hey, you can do this a little better. Um,
Right.
it's a process. It's not a we meet one time and ta-da. It's a constant checking in and making sure that at least they need to be consistent. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yes.
Be
Yes.
consistent, and you'll find your strides. That's why
Yes.
I noticed from those who I mentor. Um, just be consistent and just like talk. You're gonna get so much. It's kind of if so being part of the startup ecosystem. It's like information overload. Everyone has an opinion. Even mine's an opinion, even though I'm their mentor. But in the end, they'll choose what they need to choose, and to me, I'm just trying to support that, wherever
Yes. Well,
that decision is.
yeah, well, I think you bring up a lot of important things right now. I mean, you talk about sustainability, and I think when it comes to strategy, that's something that people need to understand is that the difference between tactics and strategy is that you're going for sustainability. You're going for, again, the long term orientation of things, and this and the not even just survival, but really the effective navigation of the landscape. And you talk about something that I think is important to repeat, that it's not a linear process and it requires constant refinement, because it is also a component that a lot of people miss in strategy. They think that they set the strategy, they set the course, and that's the line that they have to follow, and they can't defer from that. And I think that's important to understand that when it comes to strategy, it really isn't a linear process. And you have to have that understanding before you even start in order to move efficiently. Now, you teach foresight and innovation. In a world that is changing as fast as ours with AI and the job market shifts that we've discussed, how does a strategic leader build a plan that's firm enough to give direction, but flexible enough to survive the future?
Yeah, I mean, in the world of work, it's so what I'm teaching my interns, my village up interns is diversify your income stream. So what okay, Noel, so theater major, right? Theater major. Doesn't know it, has an idea what she wants. She was on social media and never done social media, but I'm like, hey, it's an internship, right? You gotta learn. She did really well. And we had an event. So Core Roy is a B Corp sustainability brand. Said, hey, who's your social media person? Oh no. Like, can you intro me? And she got hired
Wow.
as a gig.
Yeah.
And even to this day, that was like 2023. And I told her diversify. Or I remember one. a founder hit me up saying, "Hey, Jules, like, I know you used to do social media. Like, can we kind of hire you for a couple months, for a gig?" I'm like, "Well, you could, or you could hire Sam, my intern at the time." Again, is showing, just giving them opportunity to show them like, "Hey, I need you to hustle, like diversify your income stream." So, in this age, yeah, gig work and hustle culture, that's real. In regards to, like, when I say hustle culture, I mean I refer to doing side gigs or doing something you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I
it's really
think,
hard, yeah. And also stand out. Oh, the biggest thing is LinkedIn. I don't know why my mentees and my interns that I deal with have this they're Gen Z. They have this issue of um they want to post on LinkedIn.
right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not your private Instagram. This is like professional.
Uh
And
huh.
like I told Amplify, you just put on an event for Village Job. You put it on. My job was just I just paid for like and but they executed. And sometimes they were like, "Oh, I don't know if I should put that." Like, no, I need you to be visible. So I want them to be set up for success. So potential employers can be like, "Wow, you could do that." Like I didn't, so it's fascinating dynamic I'm seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you touch on a lot of, very real things right now. And when you talk about diversifying, I think you're talking about going the direction of more of a portfolio career, which is a very common trend that has popped up. Really, I mean, it's been around for a long time, but it has really given rise to the concept since the pandemic. But it's this idea of not just having one career or one job, but seeking out multiple jobs that serve different interests. And it really challenges this idea of being a specialist versus a generalist,
Mm,
which, for the longest time, we were always taught to specialize, to pursue one degree, one area of expertise, and to stay in that lane for the rest of our lives. But what this younger generation and even millennials and Gen X are picking up on this. They're realizing that being a specialist isn't really serving their needs. It's not really sustainable. And they're recognizing that they have multiple, different interests, different passions that they want to pursue. And so this concept of portfolio projects or, in your case, you're talking about it as diversifying your income streams. It gives people more than one pathway in terms of opportunities that they can take advantage
mhm.
of. So I think that's huge.
I do want to comment about that. The whole
Yeah.
journalist versus specialist. Um, I get it, but at the same time, for me, I need that focus. Like
Yes.
it can't be too off. It has to be like you could be a journalist in the field of marketing, right? Like
Mhm.
great content creation, communication, so forth, but it can be like far off, like operations and super extreme, like a cook or something, or
Yeah.
something, like, hey, I want to work in a chef. Like, it has to be like, if it's the realm of operations, like, yeah, of different fields, from
Uh-huh.
culinary to like a tech startup, cool, but not like direct, right? Like, oh, I could do, yeah, I struggle with that. Like, oh, I could do event planning and marketing and like, oh, wait, hold up. Like I need you on a certain lane, or I need like, or even can you verify like you're good at that and not like A, B, C? Like, what are you good at? Like, it's just from an employer perspective, it's like, I need you to know you're good at this, what I need. That's great, you're good at
Hmm.
that, but sometimes like I really need you to be good at this, right? Like marketing. Like I need you to crush it here. That's great you're doing
Yeah.
all that, but here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you absolutely make valid points. And it really depends on the person, right? Like there are people who function best as specialists who who want to, have to, or need to, whatever, um, really get good at one thing. And that's the way that their brain works. And then I've come to learn, and this is more like I do career coaching as well, and I've come to find in my work that there are a lot of people who can't function that way, who can't specialize
Mm.
because their brain just goes in too many different directions. But the one thing that is important, like, and there's a term, the term that they use now is multi-passionate,
Oh,
or
interesting.
multi-potentialite. But it's this concept that as people, some of us have to pursue multiple passions, and that's actually where we thrive. And so, this was something that I started to learn about myself because if you look at my career trajectory, I went from, teaching voice and piano lessons to working in fashion retail to working in management, marketing, and now I'm in consulting. So, like at surface level, those look like very unrelated things, but as I really took the time to dive into understanding why my trajectory was like that and understanding the central purpose that related all of that, I discovered that what I'm really good at is helping other
Mm.
people to discover who they are, to figure out how to like gain the skills, gain the things that they want to pursue. That was my specialty. And so my career, like my jobs, were more of the mediums in which I was able to fulfill that specialty of helping others, right? Whether it was leadership, marketing was about helping them find a solution to their problems. So it was always about helping and serving others. That was my specialty. So I think when it comes to the conversation around specialist versus generalist, it's more so about understanding the root
Yeah,
purpose, the root
totally agree.
why, and that's what's really going to define it all. So I think that you're absolutely valid, and that perspective is not wrong. I think it's understanding the nuance of that. But I want to build on the idea of foresight because when we talk about diversification and diversifying your revenue streams, I think that there's a nuance there of being strategic versus just reacting. And this is a problem that we see a lot when it comes to business leaders. For example, like a crisis hits, right? We see this all the time. A crisis hits, a leader makes a quick move, and they call it a strategic pivot.
Mm.
But to me, and to you, there's a massive difference between a strategic direction, which is proactive and it builds towards a vision, and a recovery tactic, which is reactive and is just about
Yeah.
survival. The distinction there isn't just about being proactive versus reactive. It's really about intent. And like we talked about,
Mhm.
sustainability.
Mhm.
Strategy is designed to build a competitive advantage over time, right?
Mhm.
Recovery tactics, on the other hand, are designed to stop the bleeding right now. The danger there, in my opinion, and the nuance that's worth exploring is that leaders often permanently adopt their recovery tactics as their strategy. They get addicted to the firefighting mode because it feels productive, but it builds no long term infrastructure. Where's the line, Julius? Like, how does a leader know if they're genuinely evolving their ecosystem or if they're just institutionalizing a panic reaction that they've mislabeled as strategy?
Yeah, that's let's g- let's use this year with the nonprofit sector. You know, the federal policy, a lot of rollbacks, especially companies, private companies, big companies, it permeates, right? Like
Yeah.
that, just the attitude of federal funding for DEI and programs and so on. So I saw the writing on the wall. I mean, so Village Up, we called our coalition together. We had I kid you not, when I and normally we would do it in Zoom, but I was like, no, this was February. I think we need to do this in person. So
Mm.
I emailed everyone, hey, we're going to the BBB at Claremont to just kind of figure, like bring everyone together. What's happening here? All ten people showed up. So I had 10 people, 10 organization in the room. SCSU was there, CDC, and so forth. And I kid you not, we read the article about the what's called the new federal mandate of discontinuing funding for DI
Funding.
initiatives. Like the article.
Right.
My chief of staff at that time read the entire article in front of everyone. So panic mode, right? And right? So it's like, hey, we need to do something. So this coalition is an agreement to look for funding together, right? So even I knew like we need to prepare, and so that was reactive, but it was long term. Like, hey, these are our partners. I was very strategic on who to invite, and be like, how can we build, look for grants together, right? Look for funding opportunities together. And with that, it was more like, hey, what's the mechanism? So we were going to use AI we're going to create an AI tool that's still in development to look for public funding, and for us, and I actually built the the coalition structure, and also and with their input, the design mechanism of how, of basically when are we gonna agree for go for funding,
Hmm.
you know. So that was a strategic move. That was not reactive, even though the writing was on the wall. We're inclination about cutting funds being cut. Um, yeah, that move was a very strategic and intentional for long term. On the deal operations, we just kept it as, because I'm like, I told my chief of staff at that time, like, no, this is a high priority right now. This coalition is high priority, survival mode. But at the same time, it's not our survival, it's everyone, our partners. We need to do this together. The moment, because my biggest fear is like a dog eat dog world. And it's tough out there. I'm not gonna lie. It is tough. The funding I used to get, I am not getting.
Mm, yeah.
And sometimes it's hard, but at the same time, I don't want to lose us, our heart, our camaraderie, and our relationships, because we're desperate and we're hungry, which is true. But I refuse to, yeah, I just refuse to be dog eat dog world.
Yeah. Well, I think where the answer really comes there is you said earlier in the episode that the whole point with your organization is about the partnerships and the
Hmm.
relationships. And in reacting and responding to this change in federal funding for nonprofits and DEI, you might have changed the operations, yes, but it still was very much about the partnerships,
Yes,
because
yes,
that is your North Star.
yeah.
Right. And I think that's where the difference comes between the strategy and the tactics. That in the short term, yes, you're making changes to how you're responding to what's happening, but what you're trying to get to and what your um again, your North Star is, that isn't changing. And I think that's the important piece for people to recognize when it comes to to strategic thinking is, again, stay stay the course. It
Hmm.
can change. You
Yeah.
can move in different pathways, take different roads, but where you're going stays the same. So I want to move that into because we're talking about infrastructure, and then that really leads me to a specific element of my consulting framework, which I call the MORE method. But in this framework, I identify specific zones of misalignment where businesses or careers break down. One of the most critical zones is the intersection of marketing and strategy. And my thesis is that when marketing, which is the story that we tell, and strategy, which is the road that we're actually walking, when those two things are misaligned, the result is a breakdown in
Mm,
communication, whether it's internal communication or or external communication. So the organization confuses its market, its employees, and its stakeholders because the promise doesn't match the plan. So you work in complex ecosystems where clarity is everything, especially in the nonprofit world, and when you're working in ecosystems like that are so heavily rooted in things like DEI. If the story doesn't match the infrastructure, the community loses trust instantly. So, in your work, how often do you see this specific misalignment? What happens to an ecosystem when the narrative gets ahead of the infrastructure? And
mm,
how do you help those leaders bring their strategy and their marketing back into alignment so that their communication becomes clear and trustworthy
yeah.
again?
Yeah. People like to do their own things, you know? It's interesting. So I think the issue here is a lot of disjointment. Silos are happening. There's things I learned about being a manager and leader. Um, in leadership, I realize with title, I'm dealing with egos. Bottom line,
Oh,
I mean,
100%.
like
Yes.
I don't care, like Like, I have an ego, like, yeah, I don't care. Like, people like, oh, they're so nice. There's always an ego aspect, so I'm always aware of that when I interact with everyone. People got egos, and then how you manage that, right? There's a relationship aspect, but it's really managing egos. So, but how do
Yes.
you do that when they have a title, they have certain powers, and you're trying to work together? It's not easy as, oh yeah, I can call blah blah blah. We'll sit down and oh, it'll be great. It's just the reality. So it's me being strategic. What's the ask? I know the ask or the give is not gonna be 100%, unfortunately. Because you're dealing with complex. There's politics, right? Internal politics. There's so many things. I think people need to be aware of. Like people complain, like, oh, how come bubbles not working together? There's a cultural aspect. There's so many nuance, right?
Mm,
But it is what it is. It's just kind of like I'm just being aware. I understand. Again, you have humans, you know, dealing with each other.
yeah. Yeah, well, I think you start to move more into the conversation of culture because when you're talking about, egos at the leadership level, you start to really dive into how that influences the culture that is created within the organizations. And this is actually perfect because my next guest after next week, so my next guest after your episode, is talking about culture. So this actually brings us to the conversation and really a critical link between strategy and culture. You cannot build a thriving culture on top of a broken strategy,
Mm,
right? If
mm,
your strategy is
mm.
chaotic, unclear, or misaligned, your culture will inevitably become stressful and reactive, no matter how kind you try to be. Strategy is the skeleton, but culture is the muscle. So, from your system's perspective, have you seen this play out? How does a lack of clear strategic infrastructure inadvertently destroy a company's culture and burn its people out?
I think there's a sense of signal of closing off, right? Like, oh, not
Hmm.
welcoming, you know, like this barrier has been erected that once was open and communicative. I think that's the danger when you mentioned siloed, is danger when there's this kind of organizational silo when they say, "Oh, we're open to everyone," but no, some people can,
Mm,
like no,
yeah,
only a
right.
certain amount. Um, I think that's very dangerous compared to like, oh yeah, I mean, I think you need to be really explicit of what this involvement looks like. Like, what degree. Be very clear on that. What kind of access? I know of a situation where I'll say jobs where it was I wanted to talk to the partners and just being the new employee, I just wanted to talk to our each partner and just kind of like get to know them, and I was told no, no, that's not your role. But I was like, but we're oh, you know, interesting, right? And I've experienced where when I was in college, my intern for the city of Chula Vista, my manager, you know what she did? She said, "Come on, we're gonna go around to all the departments." I'm like, I was under constituent service. I'm like, "Oh, okay, what's going on?" So no, I want you to meet all the directors and manager. I just want just meet them, talk to them a bit, what they do. It was amazing. I didn't know like the what's called the infrastructure department, all finance. Just it was amazing. I'm like, I didn't. And for me, I'm like, I didn't realize there's so many. At that time the bureaucracy. And it's like I get it, like a student leader, like I kind of get like, oh, it's kind of similar. This is different departments. So I appreciate that. Even for right now, my interns right now, for the village up. Oh, I encourage them like which founder you want to talk to, which partner. I'm more happy to intro. Like I encourage, yeah, talk to our board president. She's an attorney. Like I encourage that.
Hmm.
I never siloed my team, but like no, you're not gonna talk like they take initiative. When Alyssa reach out to one of the founders, like, hey, to do a LinkedIn interview, like, cool. I didn't like, I was not. Why didn't you inform me or CC me? I'm like, cool, good enough. Like,
Yeah.
and also encourage her, like, hey, talk to her about her entrepreneur journey and so forth. So things like that, from my experience, like I want to be open, at least like just be like kind of transparent.
Yeah. Well, I think everything that you touched on comes back to communication. And like we were saying earlier, when marketing and strategy are misaligned, it creates a breakdown in communication. And you talk a lot about, everything you've described talks about clarity, it talks about transparency, it talks about meaning what you say and following through with what you say. So I think to your point and what we discussed just a few moments ago, the lack of strategy creates this disconnect, this misalignment between your internal communications and your external communication, and that's where you start to see problems really rise up and grow. You mentioned earlier that you focus heavily on equity inclusion in your work, and many companies treat DEI, especially now, as a culture initiative or an HR problem. And DEI altogether has been under political fire, as we just
Yes.
talked about a few moments ago. But you frame it in your work as a systems design challenge.
Yes.
Why does equity have to be baked into the strategy and infrastructure of a company rather than just its culture? If it's going to be sustainable, why does DEI need to be baked into that strategy?
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, besides kind of commonality, right? Like it's like basic rights. I mean, besides besides that should be basic human rights and dignity. I think it's just good practice. Those with diverse teams make more money, are more innovative because again, diversity of thought.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's one of those things to me. It's like it's just common sense. Just treat people right.
right.
And give people
It
like
should be common sense.
yeah, yeah. It should be yes, but this is the world we live in, and I think it's good practice to be like, hey, just bake it in, and don't load up one person being, hey, they're diversity officer, where it should
Mm,
be everyone's responsibility, all
everybody.
leadership.
Yeah.
It should be.
Yes.
I think the most basic way to start is just being dignified, understanding, instead of like whatever framework, like, okay, where are you coming from? Like, let me help understand.
Yeah.
Yes, the complexity of policies, whatnot, but at least like let me understand. I think it's one of those things like just be heard and understand where you come from. But yeah, and just kind of work through it best you can.
Yeah. I don't think there's no world where you can say that you're a leader or that you are somebody who is about leadership, but not be intentional about DEI, because leadership is about understanding other people,
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah,
And so, yes, to your point, I think it does have to be it should be common sense. And I feel like we know it should be common sense, but
yeah.
it's not that common.
No, it's not. It's not.
So you're an adjunct faculty in entrepreneurship
Hmm.
and a nonprofit co-founder.
Yeah.
We've established that earlier in the episode. We're s- we're seeing a massive rise in social entrepreneurship. So businesses that exist to solve complex social issues. Is this the future of business strategy? Are we moving toward a world where profit and impact are no longer separate strategies, but one integrated ecosystem?
That's a great question. So, social entrepreneurship is a term. It's a new phenomenon. Um, but exists. So essentially, what it is, it's your typical business model. But what's baked in the mission and the intent, right, operational is some type of social good. So, example, do you remember Tom's? You buy one shoe, you get one
Yes.
shoe.
Yeah. Buy one, get one, or buy
But
one, give
yeah,
one.
buy one get one, or the profit is like 5% of the profit we make will go to a fund to fund a social cause.
Right. So like a
It
B Corp or
yeah, I mean
yeah.
that's specifically, but basically the social good needs to be baked in, and so also intentionality, like let's say a coffee shop, right? Like, no, we are only going to source from farmers in South America, or you know what, we intentionally want to reduce our carbon footprint, so all our panel infrastructure to make coffee is going to be we're going to be solar. That's the temple, right? Or
Mhm.
the bags we're gonna, certain use are gonna be like, you get it, like, kind of like, recyclable or something, right? So it's
Yeah.
really seeps in through all the business operation, all the details, all the things we purchase. Yeah, all their products must be kind of, sustainable or, yeah, ecosystem friendly. So, and so there's that, right? So we talk about the next Gen Z. They are typically more socially conscious. They're more intentional in doing good. Yes, millennials, but Gen Z as a whole, they tend to be more geared towards social consciousness, right? Especially business. So I think it's exciting. It's an opportunity. I think it's a bright future, but I don't think it's like common yet. Social entrepreneurship. But I think in the next couple of years, in the next decade, I believe it will be.
Yeah. I think what'll be interesting is typically when we think about, social entrepreneurship or really, we talk about the triple bottom line of sustainability being a key component. We often think about sustainability in terms of helping the planet. But what I think we'll see a lot, especially in the next few years, is um, businesses popping up or businesses coming to rise that are intended to solve social issues relating to people and the human experience, especially with the rise of AI technology and everything that's happening in the world of work. I think we're going to see a lot of entrepreneurs and businesses coming out that are going to be committed to not just talking about how to sustain the planet, how to help heal the planet, but about how to maintain, sustain, rebuild the human experience. And I think that'll be really interesting.
Hmm.
So we can't talk about the future of strategy without talking about AI, right? But I have a concern.
Fair enough.
My
Hmm.
personal view is that AI is an incredible tool for strategic logistics, which is, the research, the data analysis, but we have to remember that it's the co-pilot, not the pilot. My fear is that leaders are starting to ask AI to do the thinking for them when it comes to, strategic thinking.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when you rely on an algorithm to lead strategy, you strip out the critical human elements,
Yes.
intuition, emotion,
Yes.
discernment, and nuance. And if you build a strategy that neglects those elements, those human elements, it creates a compounding effect of ineffectiveness.
Hmm.
From your perspective, as someone who designs human centric ecosystems, what are the dangers you see in this over reliance of strategic thinking using AI? What happens to a long term strategy when we let the co pilot take the wheel and remove the human nuance from the decision making process? And I'm curious because you mentioned a little bit earlier when you're talking about responding to the changes in funding for DEI
Hmm.
programs, you mentioned that you guys use a little bit of AI. So
Hmm.
I'm curious as to your take in this.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, I mean, this is a hot topic, including as an educator, right? So AI is a tool, right? Bottom line, AI is a tool. I use, full disclosure, I have Claude Premium.
Yeah.
I have,
I have
yeah,
multiple premium
yeah,
AIs.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So I use Claude specifically for the research and analysts.
yeah,
AI doesn't know what's going on in the real world, right? It's only
right.
that.
Yes.
And
Yep.
also the danger for leaders, right? Entrepreneurs, business owners, everyone is it can create the most immaculate plan, right? You could like immaculate down to like the Excel sheets, but who's going to execute it? There's a human factor, the relationship. I think that's the danger when, like, well, AI told me, AI can tell you a lot of things, but the human aspect, it went on board, the relationship to like, hey, to let go of the resource for that partnership. You can't use AI for that. There's no way. That's a human when up 110% human thing. Will
Yes.
never replace.
Yeah. Well, I think that when we think about intelligence, I think it's important to remember that on the other side of intelligence is ignorance. And as much as there is artificial intelligence, there is also artificial ignorance or the lack of knowledge
Yeah.
that they just don't have. And so, to your point, it's smart. it can do a lot of great things, but it has a limit even on its knowledge.
Yes.
And when we talk about ecosystem strategizing, and the importance of knowing all the moving parts, all the related pieces, understanding that AI is only aware of s- information up to a certain point. It doesn't know what's happening right now, day to day, live, and that's where we have to come in as human beings, as human intelligence. All
Yes.
right, so as we go into the end of the episode, I usually try to leave my listeners, my viewers, with something actionable that they can do today, tomorrow, to help improve the way that they're navigating, whether it's their career or their business. So if a leader realizes today that their vision and their infrastructure are disconnected, that they have big goals but no bridge, what's the first question they should ask their team to start closing that gap?
That's a great question. I really think you have to be really critical. You gotta stop saying we're good. Um, Numbers don't lie, revenue streams don't lie. But then you have to ask, like, are we? It's one of those things where, are we falling into are we just comfortable in just doing the same thing over and over again? It's a
Yeah.
hard conversation with yourself. And it starts with yourself as a leader. Like, you gotta recognize, like, something is not going right, because again, it comes from the top, like, it's a hard conversation. I'm always critical. Like, are we really doing, like, are we really helping people? Like, are we doing our mission
Yeah.
all the time? And then the first part is, right, like, realizing yourself, like, you gotta come to term with, okay, let's be critical. Second term is like looking at your activities, your finance. Like, you're either gonna be shocked, or you'll be like, okay, we're on the mark. So you need both. And then you need to present to your team, because again, you can say, oh, I think. See, you say I think, that's the danger right there, compared to, like, based upon here, this is how many people we serve, this is a revenue like, numbers don't lie. So the quarterly reports are there. Something is not mashing. There's a disconnect.
Yeah.
I think,
I
yeah.
think
So there's two aspects, those three aspects. Self, look at the data and be real critical. Be like, oh, don't pat it.
for me, I think the most critical, or maybe the most helpful question that leaders can ask themselves, if they are starting to recognize that maybe their vision and their infrastructure are disconnected, I think the first question they have to ask themselves and their team is it time for us to change our strategy?
Mm,
Look at what you've done, look at what you have charted, and take a moment to ask yourself, like, is it is it outdated? Is it looking at a past that is no longer here and still trying to chart a course for a future that only existed 5 years ago? Right? Like, so it's like, is it taking account the right things? Is it considering all the changes that have happened, all the changes that are happening every day, and will it still work? I think that's the first question that they have to ask is it time to train? Is it time to change our strategy? Is it working? Does this take us to the future that
mm,
is the future that we've envisioned, even the future that is possible
yeah.
anymore with the things that have happened, right? I think those are the important things to ask, is because so many people get get stuck and get so obsessed with the status quo that they often fail to ask themselves and their team if it's maybe time to just change things altogether.
Yeah. So recently, 2 weeks ago, at our village up a board retreat, we asked that question: who are we serving? And one of the actionable items you know, is we're doing a need assessment. How have you interacted with us this year? Do you think we're doing our job straight up? And what we like to see in 2026. It's our first need assessment. Even who we serve, and also my team. I'm like, I changed things up. We just hired a communication strategist, because my goal for this change on the operational level was, the strategy is, I want sustainability. Um, Interns are great, but I need someone a little consistent. Interns are great when they find the strides, but oh, guess what? Their time's up. when they find their stride,
Mm,
they're like, no.
yeah.
I'm like, no, you just got it. Like, the strive is there and the beat, and I'm just like, oh, bye.
Right.
Here's your payment and your, calls credit. Oh, keep in
Yeah.
touch. I caught myself like, what am I doing? I'm hamster wheel, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that hamster wheel a little bit
Okay.
because you work a lot with developing students, with developing younger generations, and I think that that is absolutely important. And I do in my work as well. Like I really try to focus on talking to Gen Z and the younger generations because they are really the driver in the changes that we're seeing, not just in the world of work or entrepreneurship, but in how we approach life, really. So, as an educator helping the next generation of entrepreneurs, what's the one strategic skill that you tell them they have to master in order to survive this next decade of business?
Don't burn bridges.
Yeah,
I tell them, don't worry about your company. You can fail. Like you could, tell me you can fail your company. Guess what? You can make a new company tomorrow, literally.
right.
For 20,
Yes. Yeah.
like I believe for state California, $25, you can create an LLC.
Yeah.
Like that's not an issue. It's the relationship. That's what's gonna make you thrive and
Yes.
everything, like help you. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Well, Julius, it has been a pleasure.
Yeah.
If people want to work with you, if people want to connect with you, or if people want to, bring you on as a consultant, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
LinkedIn, my LinkedIn, and also I have a website, juliusalejandro.com. Yeah.
Perfect. Is there anything you're working on right now? Any projects, any events that you want to promote?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that in regards to sustainability. So January, I'm launching a course, a 6-week course on entrepreneurship, focused on, right, the mission, the sustainability, the profitability, and also leaning into a big ambiguity. So so the pilot program will be January, and then full course will be in the summer. So be a lookout for that. It'll be on my LinkedIn.
Perfect. And do you want to say anything about Village Up? Do you want to tell us anything about the organization?
Yeah, so Village Hubs help diverse entrepreneurs with access to resource in the San Diego entrepreneur community. We do a lot of partnership events, real talks. If you want to be a speaker, or we have quarterly mixers. We partner with a lot of entities like Stella Foundation, which is focused on women founders and investors. CI CDC, CI's area doing economic development, and so forth. So we partner with higher education institutions, SASU, Miramar College, and so forth. So again, it's bringing entrepreneurs together and working, leveraging resources for access.
Perfect. Well, Julius, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show today to
You're welcome.
really shed a light on strategy, which I think is one of the most crucial skills that leaders need to have and to really gain to navigate this next few years and really the next decade of business. So thank you for sharing your insights. We really appreciate that.
And thank you for having me.